Hi, boys and girls. Today we're going to discuss the idea of living, no longer living, and never lived, because the new unit that you're starting in science is all about living and non-living things. And living things all have something in common. So we know that animals live. We also know that plants live. And so those things that live have something in common. They breathe, they grow, and they excrete waste. Excrete is a fancy way of saying get rid of. So all living things do that, and non-living things don't. But the interesting thing about some non-living things is that they may have been alive at one point. So let's go ahead and look at this presentation and see if we can discover which things were living or are living, and which things may have lived at one point but are no longer living, and then things that have never lived. So today we're going to classify objects into categories. So classify just means name them in a specific way. And in order to classify things, we have to sort them first. So you're going to help me sort them. All right, so let's look at all of these living things. Here's a chicken. We have a rose. We have a tree, we have a fish, a ladybird, and a pig. And all these things have much in common. First of all, they were all little at one point. They came from being very little and grew up to be bigger. This tree wasn't always this size. This pig wasn't always this size. Okay, so they were tiny and then they grew. So all living things grow. All living things need to eat or get nutrients, and all living things give off waste or excrete waste, whereas non-living things don't. So just take a minute and look at these pictures here. And what do they all have in common? If you said that they are man-made, you're absolutely right. The bottle here is man-made. Water isn't. Water is made by nature, but it's not living. These things, the silverware, the key, the clock, the bowl, and the computer were all made by man, and they're not alive. They don't grow. They don't excrete waste. They didn't start off small. And they cannot reproduce or have young either. What about these things, boys and girls? It says up here, no longer living. So that suggests that they were at one point alive. Can you guess why? Yes, paper, newspaper, and pencils all came from trees. Trees are alive. So these were once part of a tree, so they were once alive, but because they're now in their new form, they are no longer living. Plus they're man-made. This here is thread, cotton thread, from the cotton plant. So it's no longer living, even though at one point it came from a plant, it's no longer living. This is what we call a fossil. Fossils are thousands or millions of years old, and it's a creature from that time that is embedded in rock, and it's sort of fossilized or calcified and become kind of like a rock itself. So at one point, this creature was alive, but now it's no longer living. And here I have a beautiful bowl of fruit salad. Fruit comes from trees that are living. So this was once living, but it's no longer alive. All right, are you ready to do a quick quiz? All right. Computer, was it living, no longer living, or never lived? What do you think? Yep, it never lived. How about this fossil? Living, no longer living, or never lived? You guessed it. How about this newspaper? Which one do you think it is? Yep. How about the silverware? I think you can do it. You got it. This one's easy, right? Aha. A key, man-made? I know it's not living, but was it no longer living or never lived? Never lived, that's right. How about this paper? Paper came from trees. Yep. And the clock? Never lived. How about this fish? Can you guess? Shout it out. And the chicken? Shout it even louder. Let the neighbors hear what you think this is. Oh yes, it's living. And the rose? Living. Never lived. Ladybird? Fruit salad. Where does it go, boys and girls? Shout it out. You guessed it. How about this tree? Living, no longer living, or never lived? Shout it out. Yep, you got it. How about the thread? Cotton thread came from a cotton plant, so it's, you said it, no longer living. All right, how about a pencil? Came from a tree, no longer living. And of course, a bowl, we know, never lived. All right, boys and girls, no longer living, things that were once alive, things that never lived, usually man-made, and living, well, that's pretty easy. Just like you, they're living. Living things need to eat. They need to breathe. They need water. And they excrete waste. And by the way, they can grow and have young. All right, you're going to read in your science book, page 26 and 27. And then you're going to answer the activity questions on page 27. And I would like you to discuss this at the dinner table with your parents. What's the difference between living, no longer living, and never lived? All right, until next time, bye.